Welcome back. Well, Western Europe is home to 15 million Muslims, most of them under 30 years of age. Now, while you could argue that some of them came to Europe looking for a better life and have found it, life still is far from ideal for many. Let's look closely at some of the countries in question here. In Belgium, there are around 400,000 Muslims, or 4% of the total population. They complain of discrimination, especially against women, and high levels of unemployment. In France, there are about 6 million Muslims. That's about 9% of the total population. They live mainly in poor suburbs. Their children face a ban on headscarves in state schools since the religious symbols law was introduced in 2004. Well, Muslims in Germany number about 3 million, or slightly more than 3.5%. Until recently, they were considered guest workers, but steps are being taken to improve their integration into German society. Finally, the UK has the oldest Muslim community in Europe. There are about 2 million Muslims living there. Around half of them were born in the UK. They also say they face high levels of unemployment and low levels of education. Well, joining us once again from Turin, Italy, Dr. Christian Kavner, Professor of Contemporary History and International Politics at Salford University. From London, Dr. Azzam Tamimi, Director of the Institute of Political Thought. And we invited Anders Gravers, the founder of Stop the Islamization of Europe, to join us on the line, but unfortunately couldn't make it. However, we do have Bart Debby, spokesman for the Vlaams Belang Party at the Flemish Parliament, joining us. Let's start with Dr. Kavner. Just before the break, I could see you shaking your head in disagreement as things like Europe is being overwhelmed were being said.
Yeah, I mean, the figures that were given by the spokesman of the Vlaams Belang are absolutely incorrect. That's just a complete exaggeration to make people believe that we're being flooded of Islamic immigrants, but it's just factually incorrect, as you were pointing out. 400,000 people in Belgium of Muslim origin is not an overwhelming amount of population. If you look at Germany, if you look at France, yes, we do have a significant number of Muslim immigrants, but to speak of being Islamized and so on is just ridiculous. It's making people to be fearful of the other, just as he's made people in Flanders fearful of the French-speaking minority. And they've been quite successful, but it's still racist to do so.
All right, let's go over to Dr. Azzam Tamimi and pick up on a point that Bart was mentioning earlier there, that Muslims, in a sense, come to Europe and then want to tell the Europeans how to run even their public swimming pools. Do you think that Muslims sometimes want to have their cake and eat it? They come to Europe but don't want to actually adopt any of the European values?
Actually, it's the other way around. The Muslims would love to live the way they wish, and some of the racists in Europe don't want them to have that freedom. The Muslims are not imposing on the Europeans any way of life. They're not telling them to renounce this or desert that, but they're telling them we have values, and our values, or living according to our values, does not infringe on you. What harm does it do your guest in Belgium if my wife walks in the street covering her head? We are not telling his wife to cover her head. If my daughter wants to enjoy swimming, what's the harm in making arrangements so that Muslim girls who want to swim alone and not have boys with them can swim alone? Or is it the other way around, that they want to impose on us what they believe to be their way of life? They go to the Arab countries, some of those who go and work in Saudi Arabia or in Dubai, and they enjoy whatever they like, their way of life. Nobody is imposing anything on them. I mean, it's completely hypocritical when they talk about democracy and participate in a democratic process and want to deny the Muslims the right to live the way they want without infringing on the others.
All right, let's take that point straight to Bart. Why not let others live the way they want to live, seems to be the question.
Well, because in the Western of Europe, we have historically our way of living. Let me turn it around. I should go.
Well, the point, sorry to interrupt you, but the point that Dr. Tamimi seems to be making is that minorities should be allowed to live slightly differently if they want to, should they not?
Yeah, of course. I have no problem with their religion, and that they can do in their private matters anything they want to their religion, their way of life. But in public life, they should adapt to our way of living. We should do that the same when we go to an Islamic country. I would like to try and start a Christian school in Islamic country. I don't even want to think about what is going to happen then. So, and I also think it's unbelievable that our children are obliged to eat halal food. Even when they don't want to, they don't even have the choice anymore. So that is absolutely opposite to our way of living here in the western of Europe.
All right, let's go over to Dr. Kavnert. Is it culture or is it discrimination in housing and employment that are making a great divide between Muslim minorities and mainstream European societies?
Well, firstly, I would disagree with the previous speaker that there is a European way of culture. There's a variety of them. We have 27 member states of the European Union. Within those 27 member states, there's a variety of ways of living. You've got very southern Italians that have their way of dealing with things in Sicily. You've got people in Sweden which are completely different in a number of things. And yes, there's a common denominator, but it's absolutely ludicrous to say there's one way of doing things in Europe culturally, and if they don't want to do it, then they should get out. That is ludicrous. In addition to that, I think it is true to say that unemployment is a particularly big problem amongst the Muslim immigration. If we look at France and the race riots, you can see how the kind of fear of not being able to do anything with your life, of not getting a job, being rejected by society is translating into violence. Now, we obviously have to say that those alienated terrorists don't tend to come from that background. So again, we shouldn't be mixing the debate on terrorism with the debate on immigration too much, because while there are some elements of immigrants who may have then been converted, it is equally true to say that there are some natural homegrown terrorists for instance, the latest failed attempt in Germany, where 2 out of the 3 potential terrorists were actually Germans. They were born as Germans, they were leading the German or the European way of life until they converted to Islam. Right. This is not a problem of immigration.
Right, I'm going to bring Bart back into this. Let's look at the question from this perspective. What is it that Muslims could do to fit into Europe, in your opinion? Is there a place for them? Is there room for them?
Sorry, was that the question to me?
What is it that Muslims could or should do in order to fit into Europe, in your opinion? Is there a place for them in the continent?
Of course, Muslims are welcome here when they are able.
Okay, well then what's the price?
Sorry?
What is the price for their integration?
Yeah, well, you call it a price. I don't call it a price. I call it a normal thing. When you move to another region in the world, certainly in public life. I don't mean in private life or in religion, but in public life, they should adapt our way of living. I think that is normal. I don't think that it is normal that, for another example, in Antwerp, some Muslim women who work for the city of Antwerp, so you see they find work. When they work for the city of Antwerp, the second thing is they try to make the mayor forbid Easter eggs and Christmas trees in the public offices because that will offend them. That is not adapting to our way of living. I say they can keep their religion. Of course, they can keep their religion. They can keep their way of life in all kinds of private matters. But in public life, it's our way of living. And in public life, that means that there are no separate swimming hours for men and children. That is not. I don't know any European country where that is like that. So not even in Belgium. And I say Muslims are welcome here, and I think they can be good for. I heard the word economics before. They can be good for the economy of Belgium because we need workers and things like that. But they should take an example for the few other Muslims who live in Belgium and who are big in politics, who are doctors, who are architects, who go and study, who are good workers.
Right. I think we got the picture there. I just want to quickly bring in Dr. Azam for a quick word there before we run out of time. Listening to what's been said, do you agree with that perspective?
Of course not. I disagree. What is our way of living? When this is thrown into our faces, what does it mean?
Well, who should decide it, Dr. Azam? Who decides?
Yeah.
It's a very tricky question, isn't it? Who decides the dividing line?
Yes, of course. In democracies, there are parliaments. These parliaments legislate, so there are laws. There is a law. There is a rule of law, and if you abide by the law, then you can do whatever you like. A way of living doesn't mean that you do exactly what everybody else does in the country you live in. It means that in a democracy, you are free so long as you are not infringing on the freedom of others. I don't see what this issue about girls swimming alone. What harm does it do to the others?
Right, well,
I mean, this is is truly ridiculous.
Well, I'm sorry, we'll have to leave the discussion there. From London, Dr. Azzam Al-Tamimi, joining us from Italy, Dr. Christian Kavnert, and on the line from Belgium, of course, thank Bart Debbie from Vlaams Belang. And thank you so much here for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Feel free to email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. For now, it's goodbye.